Hello again and welcome to another episode of the Franchise Everything podcast where we talk about everything and anything franchising. I'm Glenn Walford and today we are once again with Dustin Slypen, who is a business broker in the health and wellness space, aren't you, Dustin?
Yes, correct.
Excellent, mate. We've already done one chat this morning that if you're watching this, you might have seen that already. But this one we're going to talk about what people get wrong in selling their gym or fitness franchise or something. So we're going to focus on just a handful of things there, the sort of the big rocks, I suppose, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So and that's what we wanted to cover there. We've spoken a little bit about these things, but we're going to dig in a bit more detail on this type of stuff at the moment.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's go. So the number one thing that we actually didn't cover in the previous podcast was the sellers not putting the buyer's hat on, which is, walking in their shoes. It's one thing that we all struggle to do in everyday life and just about everything we do. Can you describe it in the deals that you put together, what that looks like?
Yes. So look, the perfect deal always is a fair outcome for everyone. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to massage it together so that everyone has a win.
That miracle.
So, and look, most cases, people are pretty good to deal with.
Yep.
But it's really having a seller understand what the buyer's requirements are and what they need to put in place to get the deal over the line. So it's really making sure from the start that they put their buyer's hat on and they look at it from the if when they took over the business themselves, whether they established it from scratch.
Do you find people struggle to do that?
Quite often they do, yeah, because it's all about them and it's all about what they want to get out of the transaction.
That they're after.
Yeah. But quite often in a business, it's not like selling a house. So selling a house, you have an open home, you've got 40 people there, you've got 5 offers made. It's pretty easy stuff. Selling a business, there might be only one buyer for your business. So you've got to really make sure you make that chance with that buyer count. And it's just having systems, processes, information, data, whatever it might be to get the deal across the line and just make it as efficient and smooth sailing as possible for a buyer.
So practically, what does putting the buyer's hat on look like? So walking in their shoes for a seller. So
a buyer coming in wants to be looking at clean financial statements. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they want the business, they want to know what they're buying. They've got to have a nice, clean operating software system with real membership data, not delinquent data member where we've got 300 or 400 members in a system that haven't been members for 3 years and trying to sell that as membership
as if
data.
They're there as value.
Yeah. You got to have equipment in good working condition. Doesn't have to be brand new, but it's got to be in good working condition, well serviced and maintained. Like you were selling a house and you wanted the maximum price for it. You're not going to have holes in the wall, are you? So same thing with your equipment and your bathrooms are neat and tidy. Another key one is ensuring that you got good staff in place. So making sure your manager or your trainers have been trained on how to greet people, how to, I suppose, make the gym present as best as possible. So these sound really simple, but they're things that people get wrong.
How do you find with sellers preparing staff? Do sellers like to keep it a secret, do you find, in your experience, and what are the issues around that? Yeah,
great question. So in just about every case, it's a confidential sale and staff...
The staff don't know about it?
Staff usually don't know about it until a week before settlement. And we always advise vendors that's the best way to do it because a couple of reasons. You don't want staff overthinking it and starting to think that their job isn't safe when quite often it is. And secondly, what if the deal doesn't proceed and you've gone and told staff that you're selling and you've got a buyer, deal falls over because of finance, buyers have freaked out, they've started looking for other jobs and a vendor can be left with egg on their face.
Yeah, okay, it creates a lot of problems and unnecessary problems.
That's right, yeah.
Second one we were going to talk about and cover here was not planning around the lease. Now, I know you're very big. You think the lease is one of the biggest issues in transacting one of these businesses. So what does not planning around the lease look like? Okay,
so an example is I've just recently had a franchise sale fall over. Reason being, vendors did not exercise their option. So their lease came up it was expiring in February 2024. The lease had a 3-month trigger so 3 months prior to that expiry, they had to exercise the option.
To make a decision whether they're proceeding or not.
Correct.
Yep.
They let that lapse. So we found a buyer and this is where the issue really became a bigger issue than it had to be. The vendors thought they had a great relationship with the landlord and she'll be right was the attitude. No, she'll be right. Everything will be fine. Got a buyer, had the contract signed, franchisor approval, go to the assignment of lease, and the landlord goes, yeah, I'm more than happy to put a new lease in place for these buyers. They seem like lovely people. But we're going to go to a market review because the rent hasn't gone up in 6 years. Now, we're talking about a business that wasn't overly profitable, and the market review showed a 16,000 increase in rent per annum. When you're talking about a business not overly profitable,
that's already
borderline, that killed the deal.
Yep.
So it was over.
Because it's not just that 1 year, is it? You multiply that over the 5 years of the lease as well. So it starts to look quite significant.
Correct. And then it's a good point, Glenn. So then they wanted 5% annual rental increases on top of that. So the buyers ended up walking away from the deal. The sellers had to suck it up. Otherwise, they had nothing to sell. So they've signed a new lease on those new terms.
In a business they didn't want to be in.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's not planning. That's just not planning at all.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. That can be, and I think the lease is a real scary thing for a lot of people. They just really don't understand. It's too legal, obviously.
That's right.
They avoid it.
And that's why you've got to really engage really good commercial solicitors.
Yes.
Not conveyancing solicitors, not litigation lawyers, not family lawyers, a good commercial solicitor.
Totally. Same with anything in franchising, a specialist franchise accountant, a lawyer, whatever it may be, because they really understand it, don't they? They understand the ins and outs. They've seen it all.
Yeah, absolutely. So you wouldn't go to a GP for a toothache.
Yeah.
You go to a dentist, and same thing in business, right? So a franchising commercial specialist.
Excellent. The third thing we wanted to cover with things that you see sellers get wrong is undervaluing the modernisation requirements. Now, gyms look like they have a huge amount of gear to worry about, which would be quite expensive. So can you talk us through that?
Yeah. Look, it's one of those ones where without the franchisor's understanding and their advice, a vendor usually never has it right.
Yep.
So it's really important, I think, that if you're getting close to modernisation, or it's even lapsed, you've got to get the franchisor involved and just find out the parameters from them, exactly what's going to need to be replaced, and then go and get a quote from the suppliers. Quite often a vendor, they're thinking about prices from 5 years ago from when they took over the business, and they're thinking, the
wishful thinking.
Correct. And they're thinking, I'll get away with $100,000 on this modernisation because that's what it cost 5 years ago. The reality is it's double that now. So it's usually a huge detrimental part to a sale. Franchisors jeopardizing a deal when they tell a buyer what they really have to spend on a modernisation. Whether we agree it's the right figure or not, that's not up. If you're buying into a franchise,
it's in the franchise agreement when you go in.
Correct. Yeah, and you just got to abide by their rules. That's why you get into franchising.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of those problems, or a lot of those issues prop up?
Yeah, I see them regularly. Yeah. Regularly, no matter how much I tell a vendor to be ready for it. Because quite often the vendor won't want to tell the franchisor they're selling until they've got a buyer on the hook, which is fine. But they just need to be ready to factor in those costs into the price negotiations.
Do you think the vendor is hoping that the franchisor will just forget about it? That they won't have those requirements, or they won't notice that they've got that machinery that they need to update?
Yeah, or they've got that relationship with someone at head office that they think they can get it pushed through, and it'll just be thrown under the bridge. But the reality is, no, there's someone always above that person in HQ.
So what sort of stuff is being modernised? What's normally the requirement that franchisors are putting on? And does it vary that much between the types of gyms that we're talking about?
Yeah, huge variance. So look, if you're looking at if you're in the Pilates space, for instance, you should be getting a good 7 to 10 years out of your reformers if you're servicing them, maintaining them regularly. If we're looking at the 24/7 facilities, your cardio gear, you should be getting 5 years out of that, where your franchise agreement wants you to be changing them every 5 years, and your strength and pin loaded equipment, 10 years.
Yep.
So understanding how old you understanding, when did you establish the business? If it's 6, 7 years, 8 years old, you're only a couple of years away from needing to upgrade those pin load and strength items. So it's understanding what does the future hold, because the franchisor is going to put it into the disclosure statement to the buyer that in 12, 18, 24 months, there's going to be an upgrade of significant value required.
Do you think are many gym owners and fitness equipment or fitness owners trying to extend the life of those as much as possible? Or what percentage of owners do you come across who are always wanting to have the most modern equipment they possibly can and are constantly reinvesting? Is that a thing you see regularly, or are that most people trying to hold back?
Mate, it's a great one. So the most successful operators.
This is my hunch. Yeah.
Yeah. So the most successful operators, the most profitable operators, they're happy to modernize.
Yeah.
They want a really shiny, new looking facility that just draws new members in all the time. Secondly, they've got great tax advantages with updating the equipment, great depreciation, asset value, and they've got cash flow on the business that allows them to modernize regularly and really be the best gym in town. What we flip it on ahead is you got a business struggling, not making those same profit margins, having to all of a sudden go and fork out $200,000 can be detrimental to the business. So the ones that want to modernize and are happy to do it are usually the most profitable and best performers.
Okay. It's good to know that, and that's an interesting one, those ones. But I think that's pretty common. We used to see it in cafes and everything. Those who modernise and do anything always get a bump.
Yeah,
brand new seats, new everything inside, always get a bump with customers. They get drawn in for sure.
And franchisors, they actually try and explain that to a buyer coming in that, hey, when you modernise, you're going to relaunch this as almost a brand new gym. So it has great advantages. But they also want to factor that into the price, and we've got to relay that to the vendor. And that's where it becomes a bit of a sticking problem.
Yeah, okay. And the last one that we want to talk about, and this is one I found very interesting when we talked about this in our pre-briefing here, was the challenge of the owner being the business. The owner is the business. Can you talk the way through why that can be a problem?
Yes. So,
because we're always telling owners to be the face of their business.
Yeah.
Be the face of your business if you want to grow it, but it can become a problem at sale through your experience.
Can become a massive problem when you're selling a service-based business because you are the goodwill. Now, you can relay that to other industries as well. When you are the goodwill of the business holds significant risk through a change of ownership. So when we're looking at 24/7 facilities, big box facilities, majority of members wouldn't even know who the owner is. A lot of the owners are quite passive and the business just ticks along on its own 2 feet. When you've got a functional training facility where the owners are taking half the classes, they're in there driving the culture, or they're a Pilates business and they're taking, they're the instructor taking the sessions, it holds significant risk for that buyer. And put yourself in the buyer's shoes. They come in, you go out, all those clients, they don't know you from a bar of soap. Are they going to like your style of training?
You'd be quite nervous as a buyer, wouldn't you?
Correct. Yeah. So through when you've decided you want to sell, over that probably 6 months in advance period, you want to transition out. And obviously it's a catch-22 because you want to maximize the sale result, but you also want to be making as much money as you can through the process. But to maximize the sale result, you want to actually try and step out of being the face of the business. Do all the back end, not a problem, but don't be the face of the business.
Okay, excellent. Great information, Dustin. No doubt
Thank
we'll be
you.
back and chatting more.
Look forward to it.
Excellent, thanks. And that's it for another episode of the Franchise Everything podcast. If you love this sort of information, please help us out by getting it out there further into the marketplace. Like, share, subscribe, do all that sort of stuff, and we'll catch you in the next one soon.